So anything that's going to stop speculation, particularly foreign buyer speculation, and help Canadians, we're all for. I do worry, though, that this is going to be, a great headline grabber. It's leading on CP24, but at the end of the day, it's a small percentage of the marketplace. If the government were to devote its energies to the biggest problem, I'd love to see them do a lot more in creating more supply, more homes people can afford in the marketplace.
Housing affordability will take center stage in tomorrow's federal budget. CTV News now learning the federal Liberals will ban foreign buyers for the next 2 years. The government also set to roll out a new tax-free first home savings account that will allow Canadians under 40 to save up $40,000 towards their first home. Billions of dollars will also be spent on helping cities build more affordable housing. The housing package expected to cost about $10 billion over the next 5 years. So to discuss, we welcome back to CP24 tonight Phil Soper, President and CEO of LePage, and Jeff Morrison, Executive Director of the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association. Thanks to both of you. Phil, so much to break down here. Let's start with that foreign buyers ban. That was really the headline today. Will this address Canada's housing crisis?
It's such a small percentage of the transactions that go on. What we've seen during the pandemic is that home prices can rise rapidly with virtually zero foreign investment at the residential housing level. So this is a domestic problem, not an international one. That said, it's also not going to hurt anything. As I understand it, will likely be an exemption, for example, for recreational property. We have quite a few Americans that invest in recreational property in Canada, just as Canadians like to buy homes in Florida, California, Arizona, and such.
Can you explain that a bit more? We know there are some exemptions, but what does that mean? People can still buy recreational properties?
This is speculation. No one's seen the policy. Well, we haven't seen the policy, but the talk leading into this would there'd be certain exempt categories. Foreign students. Canada is the third largest host of foreign students in the world. We have some 850,000 foreign students study at our great institutions. They subsidize those schools. They, as I understand it, are going to be exempt. And cottage country was also speculated to be outside of this chatter, because we're really focused on the housing shortage for people who need to put a roof over their head, and that the biggest problem is in our cities.
Okay, so Phil used the word small. Jeff, how many Canadian home buyers are foreign, and where do they buy? Which cities could be impacted most by this ban?
So a report had just come out a couple months ago suggesting that outside of Toronto and Vancouver, there was only about 1% of the existing housing stock that was owned by non-residents. In Toronto, that was about 3%. So that's correct that it's a relatively small proportion of the overall housing stock. It is true, however, that non-residents pay more for the properties that they buy. In Toronto, it was estimated that they pay about $100,000 more. But I agree, at the end of the day, as a standalone measure, this really will not help in any significant way. We need to ensure that there is a greater supply of affordable housing and that affordability is maintained. That's what's really going to get us out of this crisis.
But Jeff, isn't it true that foreign buyers bring foreign money and that essentially drives up prices for local consumers?
Again, when it's such a small proportion of the overall housing stock that's owned by non-residents, it's going to have a fairly significant and marginal impact. What I am curious to see in this announcement will be whether the government will essentially find a way to ensure that foreigners could also avoid not contributing to REITs, real estate investment trusts, which have been a contributing factor to this concept that we hear of called financialization, whereby REITs and other large investment pools are purchasing, in many cases, dilapidated or distressed properties, renovating them, and then jacking up rents to the point where a lot of existing tenants simply can't afford to live. That process also known as rent eviction. So if there's a way in which we can curb REITs from being able to contribute to financialization, there may be a benefit there, but that's one of those devil in the details that we'll be looking for tomorrow.
Okay, so let's talk more about that then. Phil, could this have an impact on the rental market?
One thing we've got to realize is all our markets are tight. We have extremely tight rental markets with low vacancy rates across all price ranges. It used to be a Toronto-Vancouver problem. It's now in virtually all of our cities across the country. Alberta had excess rental vacancy. That's getting sopped up. We're in last place among advanced nations in the world in terms of roofs or homes, be they for rent or purchase, per capita. We need more homes to make homes more affordable.
Okay, so let's talk about supply, because this is something Tim Hudak in that clip we ran just before we brought you both in said was really the big problem here. So I just want to pull up a board that we have to talk a bit about what the government may be introducing tomorrow in the budget. $4 billion to update zoning and permit systems, $1 billion to build more affordable housing, and $1.5 billion in loans for co-op housing. Jeff, what kind of impact will this have? Is this going to help the problem?
So we're going to have to wait and see to what the specifics of this are. The $4 billion for municipalities was promised by the Liberals in their election platform. It was a program called the Municipal Accelerator Fund. The idea behind this is that a lot of times the barrier to getting affordable housing put in place is within municipalities who lack either the capacity, the human resources, the technologies to get housing developed and approved and rezoned, et cetera. So the idea is this program will help those municipalities put in place the resources to expedite and speed up processes. In terms of the $1 billion for affordable housing, which is the sector that we represent, again, we'll have to see what that is. One of our top priorities that we have talked to Minister Ahmed Hussein, the Minister of Housing, about is an urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy, because we know urban Indigenous people suffer from the worst core housing need and homelessness in our cities. So if it's for that, we'll have to wait and see. But again, devil's in the details, which we'll find out tomorrow.
Okay, so Phil, I'm hearing sort of two main pieces of reaction to this. There are people who are prospective home buyers. They're excited about this news. They feel like they're going to have a better shot at the market. There are people who are investors, local investors, who are worried about properties that they put money into and were hoping to get a profit from. They're concerned about the market. How do you see this playing out?
Demographically, we have a growing number of homeowners. As our millennials, the largest generation in Canadian history, move further and further into home ownership stage of their lives, we're going to need more and more housing, even without immigration. You add on to that 400,000 new Canadians a year, and we need more housing. These measures won't bring home prices down. Home prices are going to continue to rise. They won't rise at the rate we saw in 2021. That was an aberration, incredibly high home prices, the pandemic, lots of factors there. But if they're rising at greater than wages and salaries, they're getting, in real terms, more and more unaffordable for young Canadian families, for example. So I'm not worried about the 70% of Canadians who already own their homes. They're going to be fine. Those assets are going to rise in value over time just because of demographics and an inching up of interest rates and accelerating home prices aren't going to stop that, because people find a way to put the roof over their head. I'm with Jeff. Our big social concern in this country is finding a way to put a roof over people who simply can't afford housing.
Okay, lots to follow. The announcement happening tomorrow. And of course, we'll bring you live details of that here on CP24. Thanks so much for your time to both of you, Phil Soper and Jeff Morrison.
Thank you.